And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking F1 testing. It's F1 2024 as go as from Wednesday, the 21st of Feb. As you can see here, practice 1, 2 and 3. I don't know why they've got them almost back to front on the official F1 website. But as you can see here, this is their testing time, 7 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's UK time. If you're in Europe, plus an hour. I'm not too sure all about the other countries, unfortunately. But also, if you follow Sky, they've also got it. It starts at 6:50, 10 to 7 in the morning on Wednesday for day one till 11:05. That's the morning session. And then you've pretty much got 11:55 to 4:05 p.m. That's going to be the afternoon session. They've got a testing wrap up at 8 o'clock. And of course, Ted's notebook. Who could miss Ted's notebook? I can't. I think it's really interesting. One of my favourite things. That's pretty much a theme around the whole, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then at 9 o'clock on the Friday, they've got Development Corner, where I imagine they're going to talk about the developments. But let's get into F1 testing. And as we know, it's going to be at Bahrain. Yeah, this is footage of the Ferrari launch behind me. I'll get there in a second. But yeah, the F1 testing is basically going to be in Bahrain for the entire 3 days. You were used to, for example, go to Barcelona, but now it's just those 3 days. And there's a few key things to look out for. An article has been done, for example, on Planet F1 about testing. And as we know, the off-season has absolutely flown by. We've had let's be honest, an absolutely crazy off-season. Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari, Gunther Steiner gone. We've got Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris extended, Carlos Sainz not staying on at Ferrari, for example. All these rumours about comings and goings. Engineers from Red Bull going to Ferrari. Hamilton taking people from Mercedes. We've got the Christian Horner investigation as well. That's still ongoing at the time of recording this. It's almost insane, isn't it? It's been the most insane off-season I've ever seen. So anyway, let's get into this F1 testing. So as we know, it takes place for 3 days, 21st to the 23rd of Feb. Wasn't always televised though back in the day, and it's only recently that it's the last 5, 6, 7 years, maybe a bit longer, that we have had the whole of testing televised, and it's one of my favourite things. It's F1 for hours and hours each day, isn't it? Even to have it on in the background. So there's a few big questions though going into testing, and one of them is certainly going to focus around the Red Bull team. So as we know, they're following up their most successful season essentially, and their car, the RB19, looks very, very different. There's even a lot of rumours that they're going to have this zero pod design is going to suddenly turn up in Bahrain, and a lot of people have suggested that they've taken a lot of inspiration from Mercedes, but they have been the yardstick, so to speak, for the last 2 seasons. Every team is going to have their eye on Red Bull. Every team is going to look at the data. Now, it's very difficult to see how much fuel you've got. That's very hard, isn't it? It's very difficult to see how much fuel, how hard they're pushing. Hopefully, we'll have an idea on what tyres they're using. But I'm listening to the Autosport podcast recently. You can't lie. What you can't lie about is the characteristics of the car as it goes into corners, and we'll speak about it in a bit. So, also, if you're lucky enough to watch the testing, watch out for the barriers around the team garages. Yes, the minute a car comes back, the barriers go up because they're all special, and they don't want to give away all of their secrets. Yeah, let's put those barriers up. But we've got eager photographers. If you remember Sergio Perez at Downer when he went out at Monaco, we all got a shot from underneath the car. Could that happen in testing? Absolutely, it could. If there's a big enough off, we've got lots of photographers doing that. So if you're new though to Formula One, teams that sandbag, they don't. For example, the big case, if any of you have watched the Brawn documentary in 2009, they knew they had a really good car, but they didn't want to. They really didn't want to show how good their car is. So they, on purpose, sandbagged to surprise everyone, essentially, at that first race meeting. That was in Australia 2009. So don't read too much into the leaderboards at the end of each day. But lap count is quite important. It's going to be absolutely critical is going to be absolutely critical for the Formula One teams is this lap count around Bahrain. We've only got 3 days now. Every second they're going to spend on the track is really, really valuable. So a high lap count at the end of the day is, even if it's not a sign of good outright pace, it's a really solid base. It's really, really reliable, and the teams are testing lots of things on their car, and everything is probably going smoothly. More laps is going to mean more data, which the teams can use for the 2024 season. Also, do not expect any of the drivers essentially to give the game away. Absolutely not. Why? Because it's pre-season, pre-season predictions. How many drivers have you said, yeah, we just need to see? But a lot of drivers have later on admitted that they know from the second they get into their car that it's whether it's a good car or not. Leclerc pretty much said that. I think he intimated at the end of last season that he knew the 2023 Ferrari could be a bit of a struggle. So, even last year's pre-season predictions, while it was the consensus that Red Bull was going to be the fastest team to turn up, them being so far ahead of everyone was a bit of a surprise. But even talking about McLaren's struggles last year, yes, McLaren, their early pace struggles were really, really evident, and their drivers were a bit coy about their chances. But okay. Driver's body language. If you looked at Lando Norris, it was very clear that he was not a happy bunny at the test. Fernando Alonso made the claim that Aston Martin were faster than some of the front-running rivals over a race distance, for example. And Alonso said he put the fuel in for those 57 laps and did the full race with the full setup, even changing the tyres at the same time. Ferrari doing the same program as us, he said, with the same fuel for the race, same stops, and we were slightly faster. And as we know, that was proven right. Aston Martin were the second fastest team in Formula One. When we got McLaren behind us, and here is one of the big questions in Bahrain. How good is McLaren? You can make an argument at some points last year, they were the second fastest team. So there's certainly going to be one to watch. A lot of people have suggested there's a lot of hidden things on their car as well. So that, I think that's going to be really, really interesting going into Bahrain. How reliable are they? I'm predicting they're going to have a much better test than they had last year, but how fast and how consistent they can be, and see watch how happy, for example, watch how happy their drivers are. Now, for Mercedes, I think Mercedes and Red Bull are potentially the two most interesting teams going into testing, because Mercedes have got, this is their last year of the Lewis Hamilton. Could this be their last year at potentially having a chance at the title? Hopefully not, but they have changed their car quite a lot. I think just as much as Red Bull. And it's going to be really interesting to see how good that Mercedes is. They still had a bit of bouncing, didn't they? I think a tiny bit. Even at last year's test, if not in the 2022 season. So it's going to be interesting to see. They've completely changed their suspension setup as well. So see how happy the drivers are. Obviously, they're not going to give the game away, but quite often you can see pictures of the engineers, how frantic they look, whether they look really, whether they're going behind the shed for a panic smoke or a vape. Yeah, that may well, for example, give the game away. Also, Ferrari. Is this Ferrari going to be good? This Ferrari, they have gone with a different suspension setup to the rest of the grid, have Ferrari and Haas, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that is going to play, how that's going to play out. They've obviously have absolute faith, and this is going to be what's important about Ferrari this year. This is going to be the building blocks of the 2025 car as well, as with all cars. So you can make an argument, if the 24 cars are disastrous and slow, potentially the 2025 cars are also going to be disastrous and slow. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But let's have a look though at that Bahrain. Let's have a look at that Bahrain track, shall we? So this, I believe, is that's one of the pole positions, I think, a long time ago. However, let's look. Here's the track here. If we just there, and as you can see, one of the most significant corners at the Bahrain track is going to be turns 9 and 10. As you can see, kind of that really tight. Now, if you want a more of a visual aid of turn 9 and 10, it's going to look. That's essentially the turn there as you come in at the top, and you can tell a lot about a car and how it's doing, particularly in the slow corners. This is something where McLaren really struggled last year. So if we look at this turns 9 and 10 here, okay. I mean, this is the first. This is going to be the second essentially DRS zone that the Mercedes is coming in. And watch also how comfortable they are in the fast corners. You can tell the difference with the car's behaviour between how much fuel it's got. It may be a bit slow, and if the driver is really, I think it may well be very interesting. So let's just transition to our testing guide. So we've got tech as well, and it says here, Planet F1 top 4 tech clues as Red Bull step away from the convergence they began. Yes, it says with Red Bull being the last team to have presented their car. Some of they're saying some more mysterious, while others it was clear what was happening. Let's examine the technical details of the leading teams. I thought this was quite interesting before we go into testing. It says the Italian team has made some minor but not so drastic changes to their SF24. That's what they're calling their car. And on the front wing, we can see the absence of the outwash components that previously separated the third and fourth elements. The outwash car, this is the 24 car here, and that is the 23 car. There. These components create an additional outwash effect, pushing dirty air away from the front tyres. A more significant difference can be seen in the geometry of the car's nose, it says. Ferrari was known for its pointed and narrow nose, which has now changed. The FF24's nose is noticeably wider, with much gentler curves, it says. But there we go. There's all the angles from the Ferrari there. Imagine they're going to talk about McLaren. They've decided to reveal fewer details, it says here, during their presentation of what they're calling the MCL38, their car, with carefully chosen angles and lighting, helping to conceal important elements. And they said what can be highlighted for now, Planet F1 says, is the different side pod inlet. McLaren chose not to follow the trend set by Red Bull and opted for a unique design to start this new season. Now, apart from this detail, they're saying there's little else mentioning until they see the McLaren in testing, and that a lot can be said for most of the teams there. There's a lot. I mean, if you remember in 2022, they had the first tests in Spain. The Mercedes were there. They looked average, there was porpoising, and then suddenly they turn up to Bahrain with the no-pod design. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, but that's just, I know, okay, it didn't work out for Mercedes turning up with this no-pod design, but it shows you that teams are going to be hiding stuff. Bearing in mind though, we've only got the 3 days, so on the first day I think you're going to see a lot of what the teams are going to have to offer, and a lot of the cars are what you see at the end of testing is pretty much what you're going to see at the Bahrain Grand Prix, because it's only a week later. And then they've got here, it's essential to note McLaren's engineers were able to test the aerodynamics of the new car in their new wind tunnel, providing valuable information, yet McLaren have now got their new wind tunnel open. And it says about Mercedes, in contrast to McLaren, Mercedes' new car looks almost unrecognisable compared to that at the beginning of the 2023 season. And as we know, Mercedes completely changed the car's concept during the 23 season, but they could only change it so much because of the budget cap. From that point on, as we know, Mercedes have worked diligently to successfully implement these new these aerodynamics philosophy, which now includes suspension changes, which they couldn't do in 2023 as well, once again because of the budget cap. They've got a very different car. That's the 23 car here, and that's the 24 car. I mean, looking at it, I mean, yeah, the paintwork's different, but you can even tell from the front how different it is. I mean, the for example, the nose doesn't go as far down. The front wing is noticeably different as well. And it says the first and most striking change is the completely different, here we go, front wing, explaining in full how Mercedes have cleverly remained within the FIA regulations, although some people have said they're clever tricks that Mercedes have used with their front wing that could constitute a few exclamation marks and people being upset. But there we go. Also, they've noticed a change in the front suspension, which features a pushrod system, but with the upper wishbone, they're saying, at a steeper angle, unlike some of the other teams. An unusual configuration, and Planet F1 have said one assumption is this helps improve airflow towards the inlets. So there we go. Scrolling down, there's a lovely few shots of Mercedes. I think we got the Red Bull as well. And it says, when it comes to concealing details, credit must be given to Red Bull, who've tried in every way to hide the true appearance of their car. However, at this point, they said we can analyse details. We have to try and provide a good explanation of their purpose. The front wing, it doesn't reveal much, they're saying. It looks identical to last year's, but changes can be seen in the car's nose and how it connects to the front ring. Red Bull have consistently presented ordinary front wings at car unveilings for years, and this element is easy to change. But they said the real mystery is in their side pod. Inlets, which have been talked about recently, and on the renders released by Red Bull, it appears as it has no inlets at all. However, some images tell a different story, so it is going to have some inlets. It's really difficult to see though. But they say what can be seen is the upper lip of the inlet is much more pronounced, which is quite unusual. And Red Bull initiate the trend of letterbox inlets. What does that mean? I mean, it's going to be an aerodynamic thing, isn't it? And here's where they've suggested about the zero pod design. Have adopted the vertical inlets, it says, similar to Mercedes' zero pod design from the 22 and beginning of 23 season. However, they said a significant undercut area is still present, making things even more mysterious. Allegedly, small vertical inlets, they're saying, are not sufficient for engine cooling. So one assumption is that Red Bull will have a letterbox inlet along with their smaller vertical inlet, which is quite interesting because they need to cool the engine in. And how many times have we seen, for example, when Adrian Newey, the designer, one of the main designers of the Red Bull, he used to package that car really tightly back in the Renault days, which upset Renault, and it made things really hot with that tight packaging. So far, we haven't seen the Honda do it so well. But if the Honda engine that Red Bull had, but if that with that really tight packaging, could that be a really good thing, or it could even be a mistake? Because that's classic Newey. That's one of the things that. If you remember the 2005 season with that tight packaging, the Mercedes engine blew up all the time, and that was supposedly one of the reasons, and one of the reasons maybe why Kimi Raikkonen is only a one-time champion and not a two-time champion, because he really should have won that season in 2005. So yeah, big changes all around. But when you wake up, if you wake up at 7 o'clock on Wednesday morning, see the teams, it's going to be interesting because then all the funny trickery in their reveals is gone. You'll see the cars on track, HD cameras. They're not going to be able to hide much. Maybe underneath their car, but in terms of what you can see with the naked eye, that's it. You can't hide. Bear in mind though, if someone does come out with a really exciting piece on their car, it does take weeks. It does take months to develop different pieces, and you can't just say, I'm going to put this on the car to copy the Red Bull and our car will go faster, because that piece could be one of when it comes to aerodynamic, this is helping this piece with this piece, if that makes sense. It's one part of a big jigsaw puzzle, so there's absolutely no way you can always go around and copy it. And the car may be intricately designed around particular parts anyway, which is going to be very hard to emulate, especially in the budget cap. So that's pretty much the testing there. We'll be with you at the end of the day throughout the testing to have a look, see what you think. Any big incidents, who's looking good, who's looking bad, and then probably a prediction show as well come the weekend going into the Bahrain Grand Prix. But if you want the testing, I mean, here we go. Once again, testing on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. Be there or be square. I'm going to have it on in the background anyway. And we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.